name is Mahin Hossein. I'm 23 years old and my preferred pronouns are he and him.
My name is Alex Marquez. I am 24. Preferred pronouns are him, his, and I'm attending CSUN.
My name is Daniel. I'm 20 years old. My pronouns are he, his, him.
My name is Luis. Preferred gender pronouns are masculine, him, his, and my age is 21.
My name is Ring Wenlei. My preferred pronouns are they, them, but I also accept she, hers.
I identify as pansexual. To explain, pan basically means all. Basically, my sexuality encompasses all genders.
I am bisexual and my gender is male.
I identify as queer.
I came out when I was 14. I was a 9th grader at Bishop Alamany High School in Mission Hills.
So when I was 4 years old, I had an older sister, and we would play like dress-up games, right? And so oftentimes I would just like perform with her, and she would like dress up in like whatever pink dresses, and then she would dress me up in pink dresses, right? And I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. But you know, my parents came in one day and they saw what my sister was doing, and they immediately scolded her, immediately scolded me. And I think that is sort of like when I sort of discovered, okay, maybe there's something different with me. Maybe I'm not quite right.
Coming out as trans was a little different because it's very recent for me.
Started coming out, it was more of a process. I started in like 11th grade.
And I came out to some of my friends immediately.
It was mostly towards high school when I started discovering like, oh, I'm actually kind of attracted to men as well.
When I came out to my mom, though, specifically, she said, and I remember this, she said, "Oh, honey, I know you're gay. As long as you're not Republican, we won't have a problem."
So I feel like I'm always in like a continuous process of coming out.
I was terrified to admit to my friends that I was queer, but many of them were queer already, so I don't even know where this fear came from.
My mom kept saying, "Oh, you're so pretty inside and out," and trying to like make friends with me because that's what she thought I wanted to hear. And I was just like, "Please don't call me pretty, like please don't." And it was an odd experience, and I finally just went out and said it. And there was a disconnect because it was over texting, and she said like, "Oh no, it's cool," but I know even to this day, even though I've been on hormones for 8 months, even though she's known for all like, I mean, it was pretty obvious. Like I've always called myself a boy since I was a very little kid, and it was just like a long time coming. She's still not to terms with it. She won't use my name. She won't use my pronoun.
Like my first year of college, I was already like fully out towards like family and friends.
But when I did tell them, extremely warm, extremely like gracious and like kind, and you know, wanted to make sure I was okay, and took me out and you know, told me like, this is fine, we still love you, you're still our friend, like you have our full support in whatever decisions you want to make in life. And it was just, I don't know, it was so affirming, and it was just such a great experience for me to come out, I guess, to that close group of friends.
And I still regularly hear her reference me as her daughter to everyone, which I think is very weird with my deep voice and facial hair now.
And I think with coming out, you kind of never stop coming out because you're always going into new areas.
Being out at a private Catholic high school was a bit of a hindrance to me because I got bullied a lot. I used to be this really self-confident person before I got into high school, and then those 4 years kind of just wrecked me and turned me into an anxious, depressed mess.
I didn't know how to deal with the feelings that I was dealing with because, you know, when you're in the closet, you're trying to repress not only your sexuality, but you're also repressing your feelings a lot, which bubble up, and it just really leads to a lot of depression and anxiety that even after you come out, you still have to deal with, kind of like on a day-to-day basis.
When I was growing up, I mentioned earlier, I repressed a lot of my sexuality.
And it's kind of a process I'm still getting over, even now, you know, almost 5 years later.
Depression ties into my queer identity, especially so because of the fact that I am South Asian. Growing up, you have this sort of like expectation that, you know, we have to take care of our parents, we have to make sure that they are proud of us, and we have to like, you know, provide a legacy for them in some sense. And oftentimes I felt like I couldn't, you know, oblige them in that way Because of the fact that I was queer, and I knew that they would not be accepting of that.
Probably a lot of queer youth have to deal with that because mostly comes from their families, or maybe they don't see media representation, or probably positive media representation of themselves.
So like my junior and senior years of high school, and I would get it in spurts. I actually was hospitalized my senior year because of an attempted suicide. I swallowed a bunch of Valium, which not even sure can kill you if you take a lot of it. I'm sure it could. But I had to have my stomach pumped, I had to have a psych evaluation, all that stuff, and it was hard, it was scary.
In regards to homelessness, well, I have several friends who live at a homeless shelter catering towards LGBTQ youth, so I can definitely say it's something that I see continuously. When I was 17, my mother asked me to leave. It was kind of like a nice kick out, and her reasoning was, well, I don't like your personality, but I know it was her own way of saying I can't deal with how queer you are.
Currently 44, or I guess not current, okay. There are over 40 pieces of legislation going like nationwide right now, pending nationwide, that specifically target trans people, and over half of them target like children, like trans youth. And I think that's like such an appalling number and so many people are like, oh my god, how did that happen? Like Supreme Court like passed like marriage equality last year, like gay rights are like on the rise.
Regularly when I go out, when I go to parties, or I'm just trying to hang out with my friends, I get people who come up to me and they go, wait, so like, are you gay or something? And I go, well, what do you mean? And they go, like, are you a lesbian? And I go, oh, no, that's not what I identify with. And they go, oh, what does that mean? I go, well, I don't consider myself a woman who solely loves women because, number one, I'm not a woman, and number two, I don't only date women. And they go, wait, what do you mean? Are you bi or something? And I go, no. And then it just becomes this whole spiraled out experience of having to explain what being trans is, having to explain what being queer is, having to explain what words you can and can't use, the difference between like intersex and hermaphrodite, which I don't think I have the right to speak on. But these people put me in this position like I am now your dictionary. Even though I'm just trying to drink at a party, I now have to sit down with multiple people interrupting each other, asking questions, and having to explain porn and how sex works for me and what my genitals look like. This is like a constant thing for me.
Like trans women of color getting murdered, and then all these like anti-trans legislation is like going through courts and like senates and like state governments. Like, how did that happen? And I feel like so many people who have been on the front lines of this are like, this has been happening, you like literally weren't listening.
I was assigned female at birth. I consider myself close to male but not quite there, and on a day-to-day basis it's very difficult because I don't fully identify with what's masculine, but instead my own form of masculinity that often encompasses femininity, and people will come at me saying that I'm not trans enough, or am I sure I'm not really just a really butch girl, or why can't I just be a lesbian or something like that.
I think one of the major issues queer youth face right now is just the fact that, you know, we don't have visibility for ourselves, especially queer people of color.
I would definitely say a lack of representation in the media. I think that as a society we're progressing forward. We have a little more representation on TV. We've got like gay teenagers on ABC Family. There's that show that's out right now about that Irish family with the gay son. I don't remember what it's called.
I think that maybe this is a very specific thing to the United States. I'm not sure how other countries like frame the way that they tell their history, but I do think that there is a prevalent kind of like ideology in the US that like equates white with like normal, and like that makes narratives about people who are not white like almost irrelevant.
In a community where people don't experience this as often or associate homosexuality or being queer or anything in that regard with white people, because that's the only media representation we have. So when I'm in my own community, when I'm in my own home, people don't really know how to react to me and tend to avoid me in general.
I do think that it's problematic to have like one mainstream narrative of what it's like to be queer, because so often the way that change comes about, like in society, comes from laws, legislation, like daily interactions that people have.
Even though I'd like to see like more people of color being represented on the queer spectrum on television, I understand that like it's a start.
In regards to safe spaces, I never think there's enough. I never think there's enough for trans people specifically. I meet gay people all the time who don't even know what trans is, which is why cis people think, oh, there's gay centers, so you'll be fine. But it's not the same thing. And I often hear gay people going, wait, you're not just gay? Like, I thought trans people were just gay people who took it a little too far, or hearing derogatory terms, or just assuming everyone that's trans is a sex worker. And they don't get it as much. Cis people don't get it. Just because they're gay doesn't mean they get it. Especially in regards to trans women. When you look at the statistics, when you look at the
Even for myself, I'm working really hard to be inclusive, but like I still say transgender brothers and sisters, and I know that there are a lot of transgender people who identify outside of the gender binary, so even like I still have things to work on. But I really think it starts here at home within our own community. How can we expect people outside of the LGBT community to be accepting of transgender folk, to want them to have them included in all of our spaces when we don't even do that within our own community?
I don't think it's that safe for me like to go back to El Salvador, because it's already pretty violent right now, especially where most of my family lives, and I don't want to give them a reason, you know, for any kind of like harassment or assaulting.
There is no such thing as a safe space as like safe. I think there are processes of making spaces safer. And I think that's more important even than declaring some place a safe space, because if you come into a space and it's called a safe space and it's not safe, then suddenly it kind of just like shatters your like belief in anything that, you know, could be safe.
In regards to all those statistics about hearing negative things, yeah, like I completely agree. I think those numbers are very valid, because I can remember vividly 2 straight weeks when I entered 11th grade. I switched schools, and every single day, at least 2 or 3 times a day, somebody would point at me and I would hear the word fag and I would hear laughter.
From teachers, it's usually like kind of dismissive too, because like we were talking about, we do know that certain historical figures like Langston Hughes, like Malcolm X, like Walt Whitman were LGBT, or so at least not completely heterosexual, but they try to dismiss it. And I know young queers, they need someone to look up to too. In terms of having kids, like I'm really excited for it. Like I'm looking forward to it, because I know there are a lot of children of color up for adoption.
I actually have like no hesitation with parenting. Sort of all my life I've known that I've wanted to have children, and even though I've been queer and, you know, I felt like I've had many fears with my own personal parents, I realized that I didn't want to instill that same sort of culture and negative feedback onto my own children. So I found purpose almost in wanting to have kids.
I know as a parent, I'm going to be way more open to whatever my kids' problems are.
It's actually my goal. I want a husband, I want 2 kids, I want a house, I want some dogs, and I'm not afraid of it, because I know that whatever shortcomings my parents had, I won't have them, and I want to make something lasting, and I think that having a family is the best way to do that.
You are valid. You are perfectly okay the way you are, and you don't need to question it anymore.
Stick around. I know that life is weird and scary, and it doesn't always feel like you belong somewhere, but it's worth it in the long run.
Don't sacrifice your happiness for the comfort of other people. I mean, you're gonna do what makes you happy, and that's really all that matters right now.
I think oftentimes, especially with queer youth, we sort of question our identity, we sort of question whether or not we are valid humans, even if we're not some sort of abomination. But I think if we just hear that, you know, we are valid, we are okay, I think that is so important. And more importantly though, that we are not alone, that there are others amongst us.
To reuse the cliche, things have gotten a lot better. I mean, I bring my partner regularly to my house. My family really likes her. They invite her over for holidays. In that regards, things are good.
We're graduating and we're going places, so I really think that we met most of our goals for right now. So let's meet the next ones together.